What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Starlight Beacon. Finally back. Took a 2 week hiatus in the news to talk about Star Wars related news, anyways. Outside of the High Republic, well, not today. We got some exciting news in regards to the Sith Lords. We've got an acknowledgement of a book. Oh, am I lagging a bit here? Give me a second. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so we got some good news on the Sith Lord front. The announcement that the book Secrets of the Sith that dropped this week. Star Wars Newsnet broke that. Shout out to Star Wars Newsnet. Very reliable source for Star Wars news and related material. Um, this is they did a similar project publication for the Jedi. It was called Secrets of the Jedi, and it was basically Luke Skywalker's journal or retelling of Jedi stories from different eras, the Clone Wars from his era. I mean, it talked about Ahsoka, it talked about Yoda, of course, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon, everybody that we've seen and we've come to know and love. So the Secrets of the Sith will also follow that same path, but it will be from Palpatine's perspective. And that is very interesting because as of now, a lot of the Sith Lords from Legends have not been incorporated into the current Lucasfilm Disney timeline. So, like a lot of the ancient Sith Lords, like Ajunta Paul and Nagasadao and Friedan Nod and Exar Kun and the whole host of Sith, including Darth Nihilus from the Knights of the Old Republic. Those have not been included in canon as of yet, to be determined if they will be. But I think that this book opens up the door, at least, for that to happen. It did mention that it will follow and talk about and recount some of the tales of the Sith that we already know from canon, from the Clone Wars. So Asajj Ventress was mentioned, Count Dooku, of course, Darth Maul. I'm assuming he's going to talk about his master, Darth Plagueis. I can't remember if that was mentioned in the book or not. But so basically, what I'm expecting or what I'm anticipating is that the line of Bane, which is, basically that's Palpatine's legacy. He comes from the line of Bane or the rule of two. So Darth Tenebrous, Darth Plagueis, Darth Bane, of course, and his entire legacy. I'm assuming that they're going to flesh that out a bit. I would hope that they do that. Bring in a lot of the Sith Lords from the line of Bane that haven't been mentioned in canon as of yet, into the canon, into the Star Wars universe. I think that's a safe bet. But I think it's an interesting concept because you get some insight into who Palpatine, like what Palpatine thought about these Sith Lords, who were his influences, like how did he view his master Plagueis, like all types of insights. That's what the Secrets of the Jedi did from Luke's perspective. It gave his perspective of these particular Jedi, and I expect that the same thing is going to happen with this book. I mean, it just makes perfect sense, in my opinion, that it would do that. So yeah, I think the line of Bane is an obvious choice outside of the Sith they mentioned because there's not that many Sith to talk about. There were a lot of Jedi in the Secrets of the Jedi book that were mentioned that aren't as popular as some of the Jedi that we know from the Clone Wars. So I think this book is a perfect chance and a perfect opportunity for them to highlight some of the less known Sith Lords, bring some Sith Lords back into canon that have yet to be. We know that what is it? I think it's the Visual Dictionary for the Rise of Skywalker. Talked about certain Sith that the fleets were named after. So the certain divisions of Palpatine's final order were named after. Each division, each platoon was named after a specific Sith Lord, and some of the ones that they mentioned were Revan. Who else was mentioned? Darth Desalis, Darth Phobos. Um, who else? I believe there was a few. Darth Anadu was also mentioned. You know, he had a fleet named after him. So that's probably, I mean, those are the obvious picks, right? But like, we have so many Sith Lords within the line of Bane that have not been brought into canon. Tenebris was also one that was mentioned. Who is Tenebris? Darth Tenebris was Darth Plagueis's master, and Darth Plagueis is Palpatine's master. So I'm assuming he's going to talk about Tenebris and his influences on his master, and you know, his perspective about, you know, Darth Tenebris as well as Darth Plagueis. Revan being named in the final order means that I'm pretty sure he's going to talk about Revan in some capacity. I would like to know what they plan to do with Darth Revan in this new canon timeline, because that hasn't been established. Like, we know certain events from the video game are canon, like the Battle of Malachor, which was the final battle between the Mandalorian Crusaders and the Jedi, where Revan activated a super weapon and it destroyed both armies, his army and the Mandalorian forces, which ended the war. So that was his final act before he fully embraced his fall to the dark side. Like, that was the nail in the coffin. But there are some other Sith that I would like for them to talk about in this book, and one of those is Ajunta Pall. Ajunta Pall is not a Sith that is currently in the Disney Lucasfilm canon, but I believe should be incorporated, and if they can include him in this book, I think that would be brilliant. Ajunta Pall is credited, he is the first Lord of the Sith. He came to power during the 100-Year Darkness, which has been mentioned. It was in Star Wars, Marvel Star Wars, the comic book issue. I believe it was issue 9 was where they mentioned the 100-Year Darkness, and that is synonymous with Ajunta Pall, because that is the campaign that he led against his fellow Jedi, because he was a Jedi. He was a Jedi Master. He rose through the ranks of the Jedi. He was a prodigy of sorts, very strong in the Force, very knowledgeable, and thought that the views of the Jedi were too narrow, and they were too narrow-minded and too dogmatic, as Palpatine would say. And he had a group of followers that left the Order with him, and they ended up waging a 100-year war against the Jedi, but they were eventually defeated and exiled from Republic space. And during this exile period is when they found the planet Korriban, and Korriban is the home world to the ancient Sith people. So the Sith were a race of people, of beings within the galaxy. They weren't originally a dark side ideology. It wasn't until these dark Jedi, found Korriban and landed, and the Sith people used dark side magic, if you will. Kind of, I'd liken it to the Night Sisters and how they use the Force and the dark side of the Force to conjure and to cast spells and different alchemy and things of that nature. The ancient Sith on Korriban practiced the same type of magic, which was that wasn't something that the Jedi at the Ajunta Paul and his followers knew. Like they weren't familiar with how they use the dark side of the Force. So he ends up and the Sith people at this point in time were like they weren't as technologically advanced. They weren't a spacefaring civilization. They were very primitive. So when Ajunta Paul and his forces landed on Korriban, like the people worshiped them basically like gods. And the king of the Sith, the Lord of the Sith people at the time, um, Ajunta Paul was able to um, get his bodyguard basically to swear allegiance to him, and they overthrew the Sith Lord, and well, not the Sith Lord, but the Lord of the Sith, and executed him publicly with his own sword. And then he claimed the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith, and so that made him officially the first Dark Lord of the Sith. And then from there, the Dark Jedi subjugated the Sith people, and then eventually the two peoples became one, known as the Sith Empire. And then, like I think 1,000 years down the road, I think the Great Space War happens, which is where Nagasadal and Freedon Nod come into the picture. So like there's a legacy and a history from the 100-Year Darkness that I think it would be interesting to hear Palpatine's perspective on from this book. I think those are two key things, like cover the 100-Year Darkness and the origins of the Sith and how they were once what brothers of the Jedi. Like they were one people at one time. They were one ideology. Like what is his opinion on that? Like does he even acknowledge that? Does Palpatine even does he care that the Jedi and Sith were once? I mean, he knows, he does talk about it briefly in Revenge of the Sith, like a slight mention. He kind of sort of alludes to I think he definitely knows that there's the connection between the Jedi and the Sith back in the old Republic, long before the rule of Bane or the line of Bane that he is from, and the rule of two. Palpatine is a very knowledgeable person. He is in many ways like Luke. He and Luke are very similar. They're scholarly. They study. They explore the histories of the Jedi and respectively Palpatine, the dark side, and the Sith. So I think this is an interesting book, and I'm excited to hear and to read about what Jedi or what Sith they decide to make canon in this, for sure. Bane on one end, he has to talk about Bane in this novel. Like that just has to happen. Like I'm expecting some exploration of the 100-Year Darkness, like without question. Like there's no way that they can ignore that aspect of the history of the Sith. And I mean he's a direct descendant of the Rule of Two. So like for me, I think that's a given. Having Tenebris mentioned and named, having him, Palpatine naming an entire legion of his troops after Tenebris means that we're going to get some information on that, as well as some information on his master Plagueis, and I think that I mean it's just a natural progression and it makes sense. Like he can't not talk about the Sith that he follows, like in his lineage of the dark side. And I don't think he can ignore in this book the legacy of the Sith as a whole, not only the Rule of Two, but like the Sith Empire that preceded it, and the many empires that preceded it, and the many wars they waged against the Jedi and the Republic, and the pitfalls and the mistakes that they made that Bane felt were critical in their demise and why he established the rule of two. Like Palpatine should he has to know all of this, and he has to. I think he should cover that in this journal, or at least it should be covered in this journal. Um, it's a very important perspective. Um, and through it, we should get a better understanding of Palpatine and his motivations and what his views are of the Sith and the Jedi, and like the whole legacy of this several thousand year conflict between these two religions, and these two ideologies. So that's what I'm really excited about when it comes to this. Like, I mean, I don't know how you can't be as a Star Wars fan. Um, and I mean, this is an opportunity for Disney to really give us and show us what their plans are and their intentions are for the Sith going forward. Because if the plan is to maintain and keep the Jedi, you can't have the Jedi without the Sith. Like, the Sith don't have to always be the main adversary for the Jedi. They should be able to face multiple combatants. They should be able to face different types of opponents and different people with different ideologies, philosophies than they do. I mean, even different Force users and different groups that don't necessarily follow the dark side but aren't Sith. I'm all for that. But the antithesis to the Jedi are the Sith. So if one is going to proceed and exist, the other has to as well. And so like that's kind of sort of where my thoughts are on it. Uh yeah, man, I'm looking forward to this book and to know more about it. Because I mean there's so many Sith Lords that have great story. I mean, Nihilus, I don't know if they're going to Nihilus is that's a difficult character to bring into canon as in its current state. But the potential of that character, in my opinion, like I feel like he would be better suited in the time period post post the sequel trilogy, because I think his power and what his abilities like surpass or like our own par with what Rey. I think that would be a great adversary for Rey. I think Nihilus would be a great adversary for her. If they're going to continue using that character and continue this storyline and continue with Finn and Poe and Rey, like I think that Nihilus would be a great adversary for her and for that generation and for this new generation. He's kind of wasted in the old Republic if he stays in that era. I don't have a problem with him staying in that era, but like there's so many other great Sith in that time period that, you know, I think would be great to cover. But yeah, where are we? So yeah, I mean, there's like, I mean, shoot, he could talk about. It could also do a good job of like establishing where everything fits time wise. Like, I think Kathleen Kennedy mentioned that it's a 25. Right now, they're working with like a 25,000 year history. So, like, can this book give us a loose timeline for where these different eras of Sith, like, do they have a way that they chronicle the history of the galaxy? You know, because the Sith Lords start at the 100-year darkness, like at the end of the 100-year darkness. That's when the Sith Empire is established on Korriban or Morban, as it's now known. Where does Exegol come into play? Like, are they going to flesh that out? Is Exegol now Morban, Korriban? Is that now the homeworld, the ancient, you know, homeworld of the Sith? Is this where Ajunta Paul goes and discovers? I don't like, how does Exegol fit into this picture? Clearly, they had something that resembled the Valley of the Dark Lords from Korriban on Exegol. That dark ominous area that Kylo was walking through at the beginning of the movie. Like there's all of these hooded Sith Lord looking figures towering over him. So who are they? Is this like a recreation of the valley from Korriban? I mean, it looks very similar to it. We also know that in season 6 of Clone Wars, Yoda travels to Morabon and encounters the spirit of Darth Bane. But he also passes through the Valley of the Dark Lord. So they're how do these two planets relate to the Sith? I mean, we've got on the Jedi side, you've got the what's the Octo, and you've got Tython, you've got Ossus, you've got Coruscant, of course, and then a variety of other Jeddah also is another ancient homeworld of the Jedi. So like it doesn't seem like anyone knows exactly where the order was firmly established. Like the Prime Jedi lived on Exegol. I mean not Exegol, but what's the planet? Octo. They're ancient Sith or Jedi statues on Jeddah that we see in Rogue One. Tython, of course, has a history. Ossus has been mentioned in the comic books. Tython as well. We see Tython in The Mandalorian. We see one of the Jedi temples, or at least is mentioned in a comic book series. I think in the Vader comic book series, he goes to Tython to find some artifact. Or is it Tython? No, I think it's Dr. Aphra. She goes to Tython to find a Jedi artifact. Yeah, so like what is the legacy of the Sith? Like is Palpatine going to recount this in this book, Secrets of the Sith? What are their secrets? Like the Secrets of the Jedi cover a lot of the abilities and of the light side of the Force and a few of the dark side abilities. Secrets of the Jedi also covered a lot of the Sith Lords that we know from the current canon timeline. Like it talks about Maul, it talks about Vader, it talks about Palpatine, it talks about Asajj Ventress, I believe, is mentioned in that. There's a number of Sith that it covers. So like I feel like what Jedi does Palpatine feel like are worth mentioning? He's going to definitely mention Anakin in this. He's got to mention Yoda, Mace Windu. Like, how does he truly feel about Mace Windu? I kind of want to know that. I just thought about that, but like if he is to talk about Mace Windu post the confrontation, right? Like, let's say this excerpt happens like after the Empire is established in his battle with Mace. Is he going to acknowledge Mace's strength with the lightsaber and his abilities as a duelist? Like, are we going to get? Is he going to say like he's like, how is he going to recount that event in that confrontation? I'd be curious to see what his thoughts are. I'm pretty sure he probably feels like if he's going to be completely honest in this, like he has to think that Mace Windu is probably would have made for a great Sith because he's such a powerful Force user and strong combatant and has such a strong will and focus and determination. Like, I think hearing what Palpatine has to say about Mace Windu would be interesting. What are his thoughts on Luke? We haven't heard his real perspective of Luke Skywalker, and he's compared him before to his father. He's talked to, not, I guess it is technically Palpatine, but Snoke talks to Kylo Ren about the strength of Luke Skywalker and how he, if Luke were younger, he would take Luke over Kylo. Like, I don't know, man. I mean, that's not even Snoke really, because that's all Palpatine, because Palpatine is now Snoke. So I don't know, man. Like, there's so much that they could cover in that. that I'd be interested in hearing, especially since it's going to be told from the viewpoint of Palpatine. Like now we get some insight into his mind and how he views certain um, characters and certain events that happen throughout the galaxy. Like, man, I'm here for it for sure. Definitely, he's going to talk about Maul and how much of a failure Maul was to him as an apprentice. Like, what were how did he view Maul prior to his defeat to Obi-Wan Kenobi? Like, how promising of a figure did he see Maul as potentially like the one? Like, did he think that he was powerful enough to one day usurp him as the Dark Lord of the Sith? Like, um that would be an interesting perspective to hear from of Palpatine. Yeah, man. Like, what are his overall thoughts on Count Dooku and Asajj Ventress and um what's the what's Maul's brother? Dang, I forgot his name. What Maul's brother was? I forgot Maul's brother's name. That's crazy. I'm blanking on it too. That hard. Uh, shoot, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, he defeated him pretty quickly. Uh, in the Clone Wars. Spoilers, by the way. Is Palpatine going to talk about the Zepho? Because what's the influence of the Zepho on the Sith? Because Khajiit he is one of the Zepho that fell to the dark side of the Force. As we know on I keep wanting to call that planet Dathomir. Um, like I believe, I think it's alluded that he is almost the source of the dark side corruption there on the planet, or the planet was just naturally attuned to the dark side, and maybe the planet corrupted him. But Dathomir has a natural affinity to the dark side of the Force. It's naturally aligned to the dark side of the Force. Like, I don't know. I don't know if Luke talked about the. I don't think I don't think the Zepho were mentioned in the Secrets of the Jedi. But it would be interesting if Palpatine mentioned them and mentioned Khajiit. I think that hearing his thoughts on the first Jedi schism, because in the Force Wars on Tython, I think that would be an interesting mention in the Secrets of the Sith. If they did that, then is how does Rajavary come into play? Because Rajavary is the Jedi master that led the revolt against the Jedi on Tython. He was the first master to fall to the temptations of the dark side. This is before the Jedi and Sith even existed, because it's technically the Jedi Order. Like, is he going to talk about that at all? That would be kind of cool, even if it's just a brief mention. They don't have to flesh out like the entirety of the Force Wars, but like they could pitch this in a way that really clearly outlines all of the flaws of the Jedi Order throughout the history of the galaxy. From every conflict, like, what's the Sith perspective? What were they fighting for? Like, why did they what was their motivation behind fighting the Sith? It's all interesting. I don't know. The fact that it's from the perspective of Palpatine that has really piqued my interest. Hey, Ma. Better late than never. Brian. Yeah, Savage. Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Appreciate that. I was completely blanking on it. But yeah, I think for those of you just joining, I'm talking about the Secrets of the Sith the book that was just mentioned, or it was announced that it's in development right now. It's a publication within the family of the Secrets of the Jedi. It's the same type of structure. Secrets of the Jedi came out, I think, last year, and it covered you know, the notable Jedi in canon, going back to the Clone Wars all the way up into Rey. And it was told from Luke's perspective. It was like Luke's journal, and he was talking about, his viewpoints on these important figures within the Jedi Order, and the Jedi Order as a whole. And so the Secrets of the Sith will be in the same vein, but it will be from Palpatine's perspectives. And so that's what I'm talking about, because that gets me kind of excited, because when it's Palpatine, and to hear his perspective of the Sith and the Jedi, and you know it's announcement that all of the Sith that we've covered in canon thus far, your Count Dooku's, your Mauls, Asajj Ventress, Savage, I believe Mother Talzin, and the Night Sisters are mentioned as well. All of those are going to be included. Snoke, I'm pretty sure Plagueis is going to be mentioned. Tenebris, I said at the top, like, I would like them to at least flesh out the line of Bane, starting with Darth Bane, the creator of the Rule of Two, who his apprentice was, and like, let's flesh out the timeline from, Bane establishing the Rule of Two all the way to Palpatine, and then beyond, to Kylo Ren, Anakin and Vader, the Acolytes of the Beyond. Like, what is that? Like, explain that some more to us. In the Secrets of the Jedi, Luke talks about certain Sith Lords that were prominent during the Clone Wars, and after he talks about the Grand Inquisitor and the Inquisitorium and their role in the Purge. So like, what, from the opposite perspective, from Palpatine's perspective, like, who are some noteworthy Jedi for him? Like, Yoda, of course, I don't see him not mentioning Yoda. I don't see him not mentioning Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka Tano, Luke Skywalker, of course, Rey. What is his opinion and viewpoint of Rey? Like, how does he view her? I mean, he was around the whole time. He was behind the scenes. So yeah, I don't know. That's all of this stuff is where I'm like, where my head is right now. Also in Legends, Ajunta Paul was credited with the being able to transfer his consciousness into another living being, which is what Palpatine uses in order to survive after the destruction of the second Death Star. So also a reason why I mentioned at the top, Ajunta Paul should be mentioned in this in some capacity. One, in Legends, he is the first official Sith Lord, and two, because Palpatine uses that ability that he is credited with creating in order to retain his life essence after death. So like, it just makes sense for him to mention him, and this would establish the ancient Sith order from its foundation on, I guess, Morabon or Exegol. I don't know what planet they want to put that on. That doesn't really matter to me. What matters is that we start fleshing out these Sith and start bringing back the Sith Lords from Legends into the current canon timeline, retrofit it to the 25,000 year history that Disney and Lucasfilm are now looking to establish. So like, like, let's give us these stories to these ancient Sith lords, and like what is Palpatine's perspective and how does he view them and what is his opinions of them, and like um I, I is our abundant and it's so much they could do with this, that gets me excited. Trev, I was wanted to say that Bane setting up the rule of two was just a Bane, could be Bane for 1,000 years. Yeah. I mean, that's one way to look at it, but I mean, to your point, like, I think that would get to hear Palpatine's thoughts on Darth Bane and his legacy and the creation of the rule of two. Um, does he think the rule of two is flawed? Um, like we know that they're kind of flexible with how they use the rule of two later down the timeline, later down the branch. They take on multiple, I wouldn't, well, not really apprentice, but they have, you know, Dooku had Asajj, but he labeled her as his assassin that also, you know, used the dark side of the force, like, but wasn't trained, I guess, in the traditional ways of the Sith. Like, how do they bend the rules? Why do they bend the rules? Why are they so flexible in that manner? Like, give us some insight into that from, you know, Palpatine's perspective. Um, does he see a way for the Sith to exist outside of the rule of two? Like, is that a possibility? Like, that would be a cool thing for him to cover in this book. Um, like, you know, the all the different schisms that happened throughout the, you know, long history of the conflict between the Jedi, Dark Jedi, Sith, um, what have you. Like, you know, just what is his overall perspective? Like, get outside of the current of what we know, the Clone Wars and the movies and, you know, everything that's established in canon. Like, go outside of that, bring in some stuff from Legends, and give us Palpatine's perspective on it. Yeah, Palpatine had several apprentices. Like, and they wouldn't necessarily be considered apprentice. He'd have basically a couple people he had his eyes on that he would start to lure in, um, you know, and start to plant seeds. Like, you know, he had um Maul, but you know that at the same time he was also working with Dooku. And like, you know, so he had, just in case, you know, Maul didn't work out, he had Dooku, but then he meets Anakin, and then that changes things. And so now he starts bringing Anakin into the fold. He starts, you know, trying to mold Anakin into a potential Sith as a, I mean, young, like as a child. As soon as he's brought to the Jedi Temple to begin his training, he starts manipulating Anakin. Um, and Maul's still alive. Palpatine, Dooku is now his number one. Um, and Dooku has Asajj, and then he gets Savage Opress eventually. So like, they play with that dynamic, and then the creation to me of the Inquisitorium, where you've got like all of these fallen Jedi now, not Sith, but Inquisitors, basically Force users that practice the dark side of the Force to do his bidding and to, you know, purge the galaxy of any remaining Jedi. Like, I mean, the way he bends the rule of two is crazy. Like, so like, I'd like to hear his perspective on all of that and what his mindset was with all of that. Um, yeah, like, he named certain Sith lords, you know, certain legions within the Final Order after certain ancient Sith lords, and a lot of these Sith lords predate Bane. Um, I mean, Revan is mentioned, so I mean, is canonized through the Sith fleet. Um, and then a host of others. So like, what else? Who else can we make canon? Like, how can we start establishing certain aspects of the dark side of the Force and the legacy of the Sith through this book beyond the prequels, or preceding the prequels, and possibly beyond the sequels as well? Like, can this book kind of set up um, the groundwork for the return of the Sith post the sequel trilogy? I mean, it's all these things are possible, and which is why I like this book is, and this announcement is kind of exciting for me. Um, what do you all think about it? Like the Secrets of the Sith. Like, who are some Sith that aren't in canon right now that you would like to be at least mentioned in this book to bring them into light, or firmly established and given a certain amount of backstory through this book? Like, Nate, drop some names. I know Trev, you're watching. Brian, I don't know how many Sith Lord but like, I mean, we've got so many to choose from during this time period, like especially the ancient Sith Lords. I would like to see. Yeah, Traya would be cool. Traya would be great, honestly. And it's kind of like weird, right? Because in my opinion, like, once you mention Malik or your Revan, that automatically makes Malik canon as well as Traya, because Traya was his master, as a Jedi. Exar Kun is another one that I would like to see. Yeah, the wow, okay, and I'm not familiar with that one. Who is this? Let me look him up. Lost it. Got too many tabs open. Yeah, like you've got, you know, am I frozen? Oop. All right, I'm back. Okay, there we go. Yeah, the legacy of Revan, I think. Oh, okay, so yeah, so he's one of the Sith that was he's in the Dark Brotherhood. Yeah, was he head of the Dark Brotherhood? Was he who's the head of the Dark Brotherhood, or the Brotherhood of Darkness? Excuse me, I forgot who that Sith was. Um I didn't follow the Bane legacy to that extent. Um yeah, okay, so he was head of the Sith Brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Darkness, during the era of Bane. Um and they didn't see eye to eye. I remember that. XR, yeah. So yeah, XR and Ulek Keldroma, they're synonymous with one another. Once you make one canon, you have to have the other, because he was, Ulek was his equal basically. Um, he was the only one that stood a chance. That actually fought him, one on one, and held his ground. So much so that he didn't. XR decided not to kill him, and he instead made him his apprentice. Same with when you bring in Nagasada, you have to bring in Ludo Kresh, and like the Great Hyperspace War and all of that, like, which I think is still a conflict that they can have post the second schism, if they continue. Like, I think you can truncate the history of the old Republic from Legends into this 25,000 year timeline, and it would actually make more sense, because I mean that having to devolve the technology over, what was it, like 40 to 50,000 years, I think. And then if you go back before then to the Rakata Empire, like, I mean, the old Legends timeline like extended like almost a million years, and that's just like that's too much. It can exist, of course, the galaxy can exist and all that, but like the prime line of storytelling, I like this 25,000 year space. Like that just makes more sense. It's easier and more feasible. Yeah, I mean, a lot of, so we also, through the Clone Wars, we get uh we establish the Sith spirits being able to retain some sort of uh you know retain themselves in some form after death. Because Bane, we see the spirit of Bane confront Yoda on Morabon. So like there's possibility that happened. Kathleen Kennedy, at least Lucasfilm, I'll say we're going to focus a lot more on the dark side of the Force in these next 5 years, in the more immediate, which I think is good because we got to get some stuff on the Sith. And I mean, you can't get rid of the Sith. Like, if you're going to keep the Jedi, you have to keep the Sith. Like, the Sith don't always have to be the main adversary all the time, but they have to be the lingering threat in the background. Like, that always has to be a possibility of and a fear for the Jedi going forward. Like the potential for the return of the Sith always has to be a threat. And then you got like, like imagine if like an explorer happens across Moraband or Exegol, learns of the ancient teachings of the Sith, starts to practice, or maybe is mentored by like a Sith spirit of like Bane or Nagasada or someone of that nature, you know what I'm saying? Like, or Junta Paul. Who was it? Jedi Knight Jedi Academy? Was it Freedon Nod that came back? Who was in or is it Mark Arachnos? Or maybe it was Nagasado. I can't remember. Whoever built the temple on Yavin 4, and they had the Masasi warriors, which I forget what Sith that was. It was either Freedon Nod, Nagasado. I think it was Mark Arachnos. It was definitely Mark Arachnos. Which is a very, I mean, that's someone else too that they should bring into canon, because he was the ruler of the Sith. He was the Dark Lord of the Sith during the golden age of the Sith Empire, prior to the Republic discovering the Sith on Korriban. Yeah, XR came back, but also Marka Ragnos he was his spirit possessed the tomb in, I think, Jedi Knight Jedi Academy 2. Because he was in the Praxium with Luke in what's my man? Kyle Katarn. I remember because that's where I first playing that game is when I first learned about Mark Arachnos as a Sith Lord. I don't know if it was the spirit, but it was definitely mentioned in that video game. I was a fan of the idea where Palpatine possessed a younger form as an idea for. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, I don't know. They really botched that for that ending, but I mean, yeah, that would have been cool. I think that would have been better. I think, having Palpatine, it would have been kind of cool if Palpatine actually possessed the non-force sensitive son, and that character, like, in hindsight, right, like we're retconning in hindsight. Like if let's say Rey and her father were like close, and like he didn't disappear, and they were both on what you call on a Jakku, and he was, and the whole time it was Palpatine, and he was trying to manipulate her into turning to the dark side, or like trying to be what he was for Anakin, all throughout his life in the temple with the Jedi, like doing the same thing but with Rey. I think that would have been cool. And then in the end, like this non-force sensitive, unassuming person is the spirit of Palpatine the whole time. Like that would have been kind of cool. I would have liked that. Oh yeah, you never played the video game. Yeah, that I remember in the video game, Mark Ragnos was, because he built the Masasi Temple, which is the rebel base. Like that whole temple in Legends was possessed by a spirit of a Sith Lord, which they didn't discover until after the fall of the Empire. Yes, yeah, a lot of the aesthetic of the golden age Sith Empire is Egyptian. You can clearly see the artistic influences. You're right, Trev. Especially with during the era of Nagasado and Freedom Nad. Wait, gotta go back. Coop Daddy Yoda. The right mixture is good. The wrong is not. That is like a very Yoda thing to say. It's just not backwards, but yes, that's a very accurate, spot on Yoda-esque phrase saying. Jedi Academy trilogy. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. The books, the Kevin Johnson. Yeah. Yeah, man. So like all of that stuff is just, I hope is what, because nothing outside of the already named characters that we're familiar with in canon currently, no one else was singled out or called out to be featured in this book. But they can't publish that book with just those featured characters and it have the same impact. It's just not enough established Sith in canon right now. So like they're gonna have to dig into Legends a bit and pull out some characters, but it's like, how far back are they gonna go, and how in depth are they gonna go? Because like I said at the top, the legacy, the line of Bane is the clear obvious choice for discussion within this book. Like it's the most directly influential Sith Lords in Palpatine's lifetime. Like he is a product of their teachings. But him, being the scholar and the smart person that he is, there's no way he limited his understanding of the Sith to just those masters. Like he had to have gone back into ancient history of the Sith and uncover and learn from some of the ancient masters as well. And so that's what I want to hear. That's definitely what I want to hear from the Sith side of things. I would like to hear Palpatine's thoughts on Dark Jedi. They aren't Sith. They aren't Jedi. Did he? Yes, I 100% agree with you on that. I want to hear that as well. Because at the end of the day, if we're being honest, it's the Dark Jedi are what created. They led to the creation of the Sith. Like that is they are the forefathers. Ajunta Paul being the main one. Like he was the last master, the master during the official days of the Jedi Order to fall to the dark side and begin the 100-year darkness. He was the first one to go and go toe to toe with the Jedi Order post the Force Wars on Tython, and the 100-year darkness is mentioned in canon. So him being the architect of the 100-year darkness, I would like him to be mentioned in this book for sure. because if you go back to Tython, the Jedi Order, the first schism was Rajavari and his followers who favored the dark side of the Force because on Tython, uh, the Jedi Order learned to use the Force in balance. They use both light and dark, and it was because they believed that in order to maintain a balance and without throwing the planet into complete chaos and it be consumed by force storms, they had to use the Force in balance. Um, it turned out that it was actually an ancient, like a Rakata artifact that had crashed or was buried like at the bottom of the ocean on Tython that was causing the force storms, and they ended up destroying that, and that kind of um, settled the planet. It returned to its natural state, and the force storms that stopped the force storms indefinitely. But I think that was, I want to say that was after the Force Wars when they discovered that. No, it was before. It was before. So yeah, like his thoughts on Rajavari would be cool. His thoughts on the Junta Paul, like I said, that would be cool. JBM, what's going on? Didn't they get sent? Let's see, what's it say? Didn't they get sent to one source or the other when they veered too much to the dark or the light? No. Well, what would happen if we're talking about on Tython? If they didn't practice perfect balance in the Force, then the force storms on the planet would become very intense and destroy like a lot of stuff. And then after they found that Rakata device and destroyed it, it settled the planet. And so what happened was like the planet no longer fell into cataclysm every time the force was used out of balance after that device was destroyed. And there were certain followers, the majority of the order favored the light side of the force, and Rajavari, on the other hand, favored more of the dark side practices. And then he had his students, and his students had followers, and they disagreed. They came to a head with the council after the Republic made contact with their order and recruited them into the Republic. There was a divide on how the Jedi would participate in this Republic. Rajavari felt like they should be more soldiers and like generals and lead the Republic into combat and make sure that it was safe from threats, both foreign and abroad. And the other masters believe that they should be basically more like scholarly and continue to study the Force and be more not get involved in warfare and things of that nature. So Rajvari felt like they were weak for thinking in that regard, and that they weren't that they would fail if that was the pursuit. And so he led a revolt, and that led to the first Jedi Schism, and they were all defeated on Tython. And then they didn't surrender. Rajvari and his followers didn't surrender, so they were all destroyed. And then that's when the order reestablished as the Jedi Order that we know today. And they moved from Tython to the planet Ossus, and they took all of their teachings, both light and dark, with them. And then that's Ajunta Paul and Exar Kun both learned of the powers of the dark side from the teachings of the dark side, the ancient texts that the order kept on Ossus. So yeah, so that's kind of sort of, so like all of that stuff. Like if Palpatine covers that in this book, like that's going to be that's what I'm looking forward to. That's like but I feel like that's just a high level expectation at this point in time. I think that's asking a lot. of this one publication, because the Secrets of the Jedi wasn't that in depth. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't cover ancient Jedi from um, outside of, I think he talks about, of course, um, the Prime Jedi on Octo. He mentions him and talks about, how the Order was established on the planet and what have you. But from Palpatine's perspective, him recounting the tales of the Sith, like, yeah, uh, I would like him to mention some of the ancient Sith lords and um, give us some sort of context around that. Like, what's the importance of Exegol now that they've introduced that into the story and they've brought that planet to canon? Like, what is its significance? Like, how does that play into the ancient history of the Sith? Like, give us some explanation on that, Paladin. Lost connection. JBM says have been studying machine learning today. Oh, excellent. Working hard always, as always. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover on this stream, man. This is exciting news, the Secrets of the Sith. Um, you know, Sith holocrons. Oh man, they got to talk about the Battle of Malachor. It's mentioned because the Battle of Malachor was mentioned in Rebels, and that was made canon. So hopefully he talks about that. Maybe we learn the fate of Revan in this book. Because from Legends, he was the one who gave the order to use the super weapon on Malachor. And it was the Jedi exile that was the one who fired the super weapon that destroyed both armies in Legends. But we'll see how the story unfolds in this current timeline. But yeah, that's kind of sort of where my head is. I feel like Ajunta Paul has to be mentioned because he is the prime Sith Lord. Like, he was the one who became Lord of the Sith first. He was the one that led the 100-Year Darkness after he was disgruntled with the direction that the Jedi were taking after the left Tython. After his forces were exiled, they discovered Korriban. And this is a legend story, by the way. And that's where they discovered the Sith people, this primitive red-skinned race of dark side force alchemists, similar to the Night Sisters on Dathomir. They used the force in the same manner, like a lot of alchemy. They could conjure things, like they were. They had the Masasi warriors. Like, they could, they learn how to create. I think they created, or at least helped the Sith create the Dark Jedi. These different, evil dark side creatures that would hunt Jedi from like unknown areas of space. So yeah, like, mention that, talk about that, like, establish where Sith came from. Like, I hope they maintain the Sith as a species, an ancient, species. I hope they keep that through line, bring that back into canon, because I like that the Sith were a people and a culture first before they became this ideology of the dark side. They were basically colonized, conquered, and their entire culture was changed into what we now know as the Sith Empire, and all that was done by Ajunta Paul. So that's his legacy. So I hope Palpatine talks about him as a character, at least beyond the outside of the his lineage, which is the lineage of Bane. But yeah, man, that's all I got for today. Thank you all for coming in, chatting, watching. Fun conversation. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what my topic will be for next week. We'll play it by ear. I know there was a rumor of Ezra Bridger casting. We'll see how that fleshes out over this week. We might talk about that next week on the next show. But yeah, that's the episode for today. If you've been watching WandaVision and you haven't been tuning into our after show on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, make sure you do so this Friday, because we do cover that show. We recap it, we talk about it, our thoughts, like what we thought about the episode, what we hope to see in the next episode, all that, just a fun conversation right here on this channel. And on Saturday, we have the Cookout, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, episode 31. We will get the show topics, and the community discussion is actually what candy do you think would make for a good movie or film or TV show adaptation? So, like, Airheads, Jolly Ranchers, Sour Patch Kids, like, all that stuff, like candy that actually has just discussion. And then we'll be back here next Sunday with a topic. And yeah, that's about it. But thank you for joining, and I will see you next week. Like I always say, peace, love, blessings, and may the force be with you always.